Paris, that sprawling, glittering animal, opened itself before Claudine with a kind of disdainful allure. She had left Montigny behind, her father's garden and the tamed wilderness of her youth, and arrived in the city where everything pulsed, moved, and demanded attention. She was 18, curious, unbroken by the world's civility, and the city seemed to sense it. Her father had remained behind among his snails and botanical experiments, trusting his daughter to the care of a distant relative. The train that carried her to Paris had trembled with the promise of transformation. When she stepped into the station, the air itself felt thicker, scented with dust, perfume, and the faint metallic tang of ambition. Her new home was elegant but sterile, long mirrors that reflected too much, the cold gleam of porcelain, the rustle of servants who never met her eyes. Claudine, accustomed to the intimate chaos of her country life, felt as though she had entered a cage lined with velvet. She observed everything, the soft cruelty in people's smiles, the delicate lies of conversation, with that same feline intelligence that had once startled her classmates. She was both amused and lonely. The city dazzled her but did not welcome her. She wrote to her father often, describing the color of the skies, the noise of the boulevards, the perfume that clung to her after an evening walk. Yet beneath her descriptions ran a quiet note of unease, the dawning awareness that Paris would not be conquered by innocence alone. Her aunt's drawing room was frequented by men who praised her beauty too readily and women who measured her with their eyes. Claudine played her part, witty, unpredictable, charming, yet when night fell she felt the emptiness of her laughter echoing inside her. She stood often by her window watching the gaslights flicker along the Seine, thinking, here begins my education, not of books or manners, but of hearts and masks. And in that thought lay both her pride and her foreboding. Paris soon taught Claudine that freedom and danger were twin sisters. Every street corner held both a temptation and a warning. Every compliment concealed a question. Yet she moved through it all with feline grace, half provoked, half protected by her curiosity. At a soirée one evening, she met Renaud. Older, magnetic, his gray eyes lined with humor and cruelty in equal measure. He was her father's acquaintance, yet his presence disturbed her in a way she could not name. He spoke to her not as a child, but as an equal, and Claudine, unused to such attention, found herself both wary and enthralled. Renaud's words lingered in her mind like perfume. He teased her about her provincial ways, her blunt honesty, her refusal to flatter. Claudine responded with sharp wit, which delighted him even more. "You are like a young cat," he told her once, "curious, wild, and ready to scratch if cornered." She smiled, but the image unsettled her, for it felt too true. Under his influence, Claudine began to explore the city beyond her aunt's supervision. She walked in Luxembourg gardens, dined at cafes where laughter was too loud, met people whose morals were as fluid as their speech. She began to see the subtle games of desire and deception that govern society, games that both fascinated and repelled her. Her diary grew more confessional. In Montigny, people lied clumsily. Here, they lie beautifully, and everyone pretends not to notice. One night, returning from a dinner where Renaud's gaze had followed her too intently, Claudine paused before her mirror. Her face looked different, older, or perhaps only more aware. The innocence that had once protected her now seemed like a fragile costume she could no longer wear convincingly. She did not yet know whether she was in danger or in love, but she sensed that something irreversible had begun, a slow awakening that would test the very boundaries of her freedom. The affair with Renaud unfolded not with violence, but with inevitability, like a door quietly closing behind her. He pursued her not with declarations, but with a steady confidence that both irritated and thrilled her. Claudine, despite her resistance, felt herself drawn into the rhythm of his attention. the way he listened, the glimmer of amusement when she defied him. Their first real intimacy came one afternoon when the city seemed to melt in the heat. They had escaped to his library, quiet, shaded, filled with the scent of old leather and tobacco. He spoke to her of books, of beauty, of human weakness, his voice low, persuasive. And then, without warning, his hand brushed hers. Claudine did not pull away. She felt instead the dizzying collision of curiosity and fear. It was not love, not yet, but the recognition of something larger than her defiance. She belonged to no one, and yet, in that moment, she felt herself being claimed. The affair, once begun, consumed her days and thoughts. She became secretive, restless, impatient with the dull rituals of her aunt's world. Her diary turned feverish, filled with contradictions. He makes me furious, and yet I wait for him. He speaks to me as though I were wise, but I am foolish to believe him. Renaud, for his part, remained elusive, kind one day, distant the next. Claudine began to sense that she was not his first student in passion, nor would she be his last. Yet the knowledge did not free her. She wanted to understand him, to test her power against his calm. When she discovered that another woman, the graceful, tragic Redsi, still haunted his memory, jealousy pierced her with a new and humiliating intensity. Her youth, which had always been her armor, became her vulnerability. That night, for the first time, Claudine wept, not for love, but for the loss of her certainty. Paris, which had seemed a playground, had become a mirror of her own contradictions. Renaud's charm began to wither under the scrutiny of Claudine's awakening mind. The very qualities that had once enthralled her, his composure, his irony, his easy authority, now seemed hollow. She saw through his elegance to the emptiness beneath. Rezi, pale and fragile, crossed her path again. Her suffering was quiet, but it carried the echo of Claudine's own. In her, she saw the future that awaited women who surrendered too easily. She pitied her, and in that pity, she found a fragment of her own freedom. Renaud sensed the change. He said, "You have grown distant. Are you bored already?" Claudine met his gaze calmly. "Perhaps I have learned what I came to learn." He laughed, but uneasily. For the first time, she saw fear flicker behind his composure, fear of losing his control. It was then she understood that their story was not love, but education. He had awakened her body, yes, but in doing so had also awakened her mind, and her mind no longer belonged to him. Claudine left him without drama. She returned his letters, his trinkets, his affection. The city, once heavy with confusion, felt lighter now. She walked its streets as though rediscovering it not through his eyes, but her own. Her diary, once filled with passion and self-doubt, grew serene again. "To love," she wrote, "is to risk blindness. To cease loving is to see clearly again." Summer ripened into autumn. Claudine, now a little older, a little quieter, watched the leaves along the Seine turn gold and fall into the water. She no longer sought excitement. She sought understanding. She returned briefly to Montigny to visit her father. The garden smelled of thyme and wet earth, unchanged. He looked at her with the mild curiosity of a man who studies rare plants. "You have grown," he said, "but you do not seem happy." "I am not unhappy, only awake." In his study, among the jars of specimens and dried herbs, Claudine felt time settle around her like a soft dust. Paris had not conquered her, it had tempered her. She had learned that independence was not the absence of feeling, but the courage to keep one's own company. When she returned to the city, it no longer dazzled or frightened her. She had learned its language of irony, of beauty, of masks. And now she could wear it without losing herself. At her window one night, she watched the lamps flicker across the river. Her reflection in the glass was both the same and new, the wild child of Montigny and the woman shaped by Paris's embrace. In her journal, she wrote her final line of the year. Paris taught me not to believe in love's promises, but to believe in myself. And perhaps that is the beginning of all true love. The city hummed below her, alive, eternal, and Claudine, smiling faintly, blew out her candle